Today I'm interviewing Pat of Pat's Backcountry Beverages about the Carbonator and soda and beer concentrates that his company makes that allow you to backpack out into the wilderness with nothing more than the concentrate, mix it together with cold water that you acquire in the field, and have yourself a cold carbonated beverage once you get there.
And kind of the first thing I wanted to ask you about was basically just the invention process. What kind of spurred you to design the carbonator?
It's about 15 years ago. I was on a backpacking trip with a buddy, and we had just bought some tasty microbrew and had it on ice, had it in a car, and we set out on a backpacking trip intending to have that cold beer waiting for us when we got back from our backpacking trip. And we got to our campsite and kind of milled around camp for a little bit and and decided, there's cold beer waiting back at the car. What are we doing? So we ended up actually, it was early enough in the day still that we packed up our tents and reloaded our backpacks and got back to the car just as the sun was setting, and we ended up car camping instead, and all in this name of being able to enjoy a cold beer. There's a lot of people out there that are enjoying the backcountry. They're sacrificing the experience of being able to enjoy a cold beer where, quite honestly, a cold beer tastes the best, and that's when you're out on an adventure. And then after we had our finished product from our beer concentrates, and we blind taste tested and felt reassured that what we had was absolutely legitimate and of the same quality and character as any craft beer that people are accustomed to enjoying. Then we were really presented with a second challenge. It's that now we have a really good beer. We got to figure out a way to carbonate it. How do we create a system that backpackers and hikers can take with them to carbonate it? We tried a lot of different approaches. The simple initial way that we went about it was using CO2 cartridges. There's a number of reasons that's just not a good system. So we began working with prototypes and designs around an effervescent chemical reaction, much like Alka-Seltzer, except harnessing the CO2 that's generated and getting that CO2 into the beverage without getting the yucky tasting stuff, the reaction salts, keeping those out of the beverage.
Now that you do have the carbonator out there and in production, can you talk a little bit about the process of getting that into stores?
So I've been attending the Outdoor Gear trade show that they hold twice a year in Salt Lake City. I've been going to that show now for the last couple of years, well before we actually had a product ready for, shelf presentation. And that's a very magical event where a lot of relationships are born and fostered. As we were finishing up our production, our first wave of production this summer on both our carbonators and our soda concentrates and sort of this first wave of product launch. So finishing that up this summer, it was right before the Outdoor Gear Show, which summer event, which is held in August. We attended that event. We had a booth we set up, and it was incredible. There was a line of people waiting to talk to us constantly, different retailers from around the country who were really excited about the product and eager to learn more about how they could get that into their stores. And so really, it happened quite organically. I think a lot of people are trying to bring a product to retail that displaces other products. It's like, okay, we have a widget. It's a lot like these other widgets, except it's a little bit different, and here's why ours is better. So it's hard for retailers to displace that existing product to bring a new product in. In our case, we're not displacing anybody. This is a brand new and novel concept. So it was really, I don't want to knock on wood, but so far it's been a pretty easy transition into getting the interest and the attention of the retailers.
Now, up to this point, you've just been selling the soda concentrate. When you start selling your beer concentrate, how will that affect things? I'm assuming that like Sportsman's Warehouse can't sell beer, but am I wrong, or what am I missing, or how will that come into effect?
Sure, it is. There's no doubt about it. It's a tricky relationship because we live in a country that is governed by the three-tiered alcohol system, and so it presents a complexity to our particular distribution. We're moving forward with a couple of different models. The most sort of ubiquitous way of presenting our product, for any of these retailers that aren't going to be able to sell our beer concentrates because it's an alcohol commodity. Basically what we're working with them on is if they so choose to surround our product with marketing that references the beer. And by the way, here are the carbonators, here are the soda concentrates, here's the little activator packets, here's everything you need to carbonate a beverage in the backcountry. We can work with them to develop a point of purchase display that says, by the way, for your beer concentrates, go down to Bob's liquor store or whatever liquor store is in close proximity, and you can pick up your beer concentrates there. So that's basically the main model that we're focused on.
Now, what about online sales? I'm not familiar with how the alcohol laws work there.
Sure. So in Alaska, we're one of the states. There's, I believe it's 37 states right now that allow it's legal to order alcohol that's shipped to your doorstep. So we're also moving forward with partnerships with online liquor retailers. So for folks that maybe can't go down to some liquor store down the street and pick up the product, they'll have the option of ordering it online and just having it delivered to their doorstep.
Now, is there an issue with your product because you're selling a concentrated beer? Does it fall under laws pertaining to higher alcohol content alcohol, or is it still considered a beer? Or?
No, it is governed. That was actually a really interesting process. It took me a very, very long time, much longer than is typical, to work with the federal organizations and agencies that license and permit manufacturers of alcoholic commodities, because they didn't know where to place us. We're an oddity in the industry. They wanted to believe we were a beer, but at the same time, the composition of the concentrate is such a high alcohol content because it's concentrated that it didn't fit within anything, the framework of what a beer really is. And so that was a really interesting endeavor. It also affirmed that we were doing something totally novel. Ultimately, it was rubber stamped that we were going to be regulated as a distilled spirit. And so our permits and our licensing and everything around our facility here is structured around a distilled spirits plant. Picture, it's the same as like a shot glass, except it's in a little flexible packet, and instead of it tasting like whiskey, it is like super, super concentrated beer that once you add a substantial amount of water to and you carbonate, it finishes and it's consumed and enjoyed the same way, a good beer is enjoyed.
So as much as you can without giving away any secrets, how does the carbonator work?
The cap that mounts to the bottle stores a pre-measured volume of water in it, and you do that through this little pump. It actually fills with water, and that water is then the triggering agent for starting the effervescent chemical reaction when it mixes with what we call our activator powder or eco-activator. Basically, our activator powder is citric acid, potassium bicarbonate. It's an effervescent reaction, food safe, totally non-toxic, and it's like I said, the reference here is think about Alka-Seltzer except in powdered form. And so the powder goes into this little container, we call it the reaction cup, that attaches to the bottom of the cap, and then the whole thing connects to the bottle, which of course has your beverage in it. When the user decides they want to initiate the chemical reaction and start the CO2, they just raise and lower the lever a couple times, it squirts the water in, starts producing the CO2, and then there's they have to shake the bottle, and that shaking actually helps to all that CO2 that's being generated and produced, it forces it to blend and mix with the beverage that they're carbonating, whether it's water, beer, soda, whatever it is they're carbonating in there.
You've had the carbonator and the soda available for people to purchase for a while. Do you have a projected date on the beer concentrates yet, or?
We do. We're looking at second quarter of 2013.
That wraps up our interview with Pat of Pat's Backcountry Beverages. And later this year, when the beer concentrate becomes available, we will be testing that with the carbonator. We'll be making a video, so look for that later this year.